Hi, I'm Obsessing Again, and in this video I'm going to be looking at a fable Kratos shares with Atreus in the form of a bedtime story.
That night, I was trying to make you a great warrior. You succeeded.
Kratos, in the eyes of people, is malevolent. After being tricked by his former mentor Ares into killing his family, Kratos avenges his family by killing Ares, the god of war. The title was earned through barbaric acts of revenge and bloodshed. The Greek god was merciless, and his reputation forced him into a life of solitude. In 2018's God of War, we meet a Kratos who is quiet, reserved, a shell of his younger self. It's a change of pace from rampaging through ancient Greece. It's established at the start that Kratos has a son and is a recent widower. Trying to put the life he had behind him, with that many skeletons in his closet, he was never going to have a quiet life. In God of War Ragnarok, we find Kratos reminiscing about Faye, playing out flashbacks from when she was alive. In these moments we see how she brings out the humanity in the hardened warrior. For instance, she says,
"To grieve deeply is to have loved fully. Open your heart to the world as you have opened it to me, and you will find every reason to keep living in it."
She and Kratos are opposites in both their emotional intelligence and way of dealing with their innate power. Faye is referenced by other characters for her humanity, trying to fight injustice whilst not being faced by other giants, gods, and many more. In what is presented as Kratos facing an impending death, we find him to be in deep solace. Having just been made general to lead his battalion against Odin, he is seen placing his spears down and seeing his life come full circle, like the god of war of old. As he lay there, Atreus comes in wanting to sleep by his father's side and probably seeking a level of comfort. Kratos prepares his son's rest by telling him a story.
There was an old man who chopped wood for his village. Every evening he bore the logs on his back and delivered them to his people. But the logs were heavy, and he grew weaker as time went. And one day, he threw down the logs as he could no longer bear their weight. And he called for death to come to him. And when death arrived,
This passage that Kratos shares is derived from The Old Man and Death from Aesop's Fable 60. It's a short story that discusses the inevitability of death. This fable has slight variations, but it's all centered around the hardships of an elder carrying a heavy load and demanding death when it seems he has given his everything. In the request of dying when death approaches, the man hurries to find he can give more, asking for death to help him with his load, and feels foolish for even asking of death. Kratos' shorter monologue is delivered to Atreus before the poignant battle as a bedtime story. The significance of this fable comes from Kratos resembling the role of the old man. He has carried the wood and burden of being the god of war and has come to the end of his tether when losing Faye. As Kratos would call upon death, I believe he is thinking of his journey of being a widower, a single parent, and how his actions have had severe consequences on himself and the ones closest to him. The fable reads as a cautionary tale. The weight of decisions made in poor faith can have consequences, which can contribute to the weight you have to carry, even into old age. With Kratos and the blood trail he leaves behind, he doesn't wish this for his son. In the finale of the previous game, Kratos kills Baldur, saying,
Why do you even care? You could have walked away.
the cycle ends here. Must be better than this.
This decision alone is what prompts Baldur's mother, Freya, to attack Kratos in the opening act of the game, a never-ending cycle of violence. In this game we find Atreus to be going against his father's wishes and going on his own adventures. Consequence of this is when Brock is stabbed by Tyr, who is Odin in disguise. Like his father, he had been deceived, and the onus of the death is aimed at Atreus by Brock's brother, Sindri. This will be the first bit of wood or heavy weight for Atreus to be burdened with.
You want sorry? This is what sorry looks like.
Kratos' harsh childhood is referenced, and those experiences have not allowed him to be the balanced paternal figure Atreus needs. It's clear he struggles to relate to his son. The authoritative tone of referring to him as boy emphasises his internal struggle of being able to love his own son. His militant upbringing has stunted his compassion and empathy. Their dealings with grief show the younger Atreus to be open, willing to talk, which is a reflection of modern society. For Kratos, the grief he has dealt with in life is beyond repair. He represents an older generation of keeping things to himself and not acknowledging it. When Atreus calls him out on it, Kratos says,
Do not mistake my silence for lack of grief.
up to this point in the story, Kratos is unaware that his purpose is to live by nurturing his son and helping people. Faye anticipates this by destroying a shrine that depicts Kratos dying in the Battle of Ragnarok, for Kratos and Atreus to create their own path. By taking the words of guidance to open his heart as his wife had said, and to adopt Atreus' willingness to help, Kratos could avoid what was to be the inevitable.
She went against her own people. Our people. To protect you.
The fable lays out that Kratos found comfort in knowing his time left was more precious than he had realised. This is emphasised in the ending where Atreus forges his own path of finding the remaining giants, and Kratos looks to rebuild and aspire from his own shrine's depiction. Kratos is far from a happy man, but he has come to terms with finding a level of peace. As Kratos tells Atreus earlier on in this story,
Death can have me when it earns me.
God of War Ragnarok allowed our emotionally mute protagonist to convey his grief in the form of a fable. It shows the developing bond between himself and Atreus, that he could shine a light on his internal thoughts, and him coming to terms with how he'll be without Atreus by his side for the foreseeable future. The weight of this scene, I think, proves to be the most poignant in the game. Part of Kratos and his arc is the underpinning of emotional development, which has been aided by Atreus, and their now shared value of,
I'm sorry.
Do not be sorry. Be better.
Don't be sorry, Father. Be better.
which transcends beyond just being gods or giants. It has made them all round better people. To be brought to near tears in this scene is not what we expect of him. His awareness of an impending fate and coming to terms with the thought of he may not always be around to protect Atreus made for an agonising watch. In a fate that presented Kratos with death, he wanted to carry the wood on his back a little longer.
What was the end of the story?
What?
Before Ragnarok. You promised to finish it if I fell asleep.
When death arrived, he asked why the old man had called for him. Seeing death before him caused the old man to reconsider his request. After a moment, he asked that death help him lift the logs onto his back, so that he may continue on his journey.
He wasn't ready to die.
He wished to keep living.
Thank you for letting me obsess again.